Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am S.K. Acharya from Ravensa University, Cuttack. Today we shall discuss about the Hathigumpha Inscription of Kharavela, module of the paper Indian Culture. The main objective of this module is to study of history and decipherment of Hathigumpha Inscription, about the language, script and content of the inscription, and also about the political, social, economic, religious and cultural achievements of King Kharavela as gleaned from the inscription. Now, this inscription is the most important record regarding the history and achievements of King Kharavela. Other inscriptions belonging to his chief queen, son and grandson, as well as some high officials, are found engraved in many caves of the Udayagiri Hill. Udayagiri Hill is one of the twin hillocks near Bhubaneswar, which formed an important seat of Jainism in ancient period. The other hillock is called as Khandagiri. These are the twin hills and the caves which are found in these slides. The inscription, Hathigumpha inscription, is called the Elephant Cave inscription. It is engraved on the ceiling of the cave. It is heavily damaged and some of the letters are completely defaced, and the inscription contains 17 lines of writing. You can see the slide. The letters are defaced and how the lines are rubbed off. This inscription was first discovered by A. Starling in 1820 and it was copied by Colonel Mackenzie. But credit goes to James Prinsep, who succeeded for the first time in deciphering this inscription from a fresh facsimile prepared by Lieutenant Kitto in 1837, and the result was published in the Journal of the Ascetic Society of Bengal. This slide shows the 17 lines of writing. This is an eye copy of the inscription and how the inscription is badly damaged at many places. One important fact about the inscription is that it has drawn attention of many scholars and has been re-edited several times. In the 19th century, several scholars like Alexander Cunningham, Bhagwan Lal Indraji, Rajendra Lal Mitra, J. F. Fleet, George Buller and others edited this inscription and offered their respective views and opinions. In the 20th century, the inscription was again revisited by epigraphists like Steno, Luders, Adi Banerjee, K. P. Jaiswal, B. M. Barua, D. C. Sarkar and others. Now coming to the importance of the record, we find that it contains the detailed account of Kharavela from his childhood to the 13th year of his reign in perfect chronological order. No epigraphical record so far discovered in India maintains such chronological sequence about a ruler and his achievements. Besides, it refers to a number of kings and dynasties of both earlier and contemporary period, which throw lights on the history of early India. And this inscription is also the earliest inscription of India that refers to Bharatavarsha and Uttarapatha. It also mentions many places of importance such as Gorothagiri, Rajagriha, Mathura, Pitunda and so on. It also talks us about the kingdoms like Anga and Magadha and also the Tamil kingdoms. The composer had a remarkable sense of history, topography and chronology of India during that time. In a sense, the record has often been christened as an eulogy of the king because the career and achievement of the king has been eulogized by the composer. Now coming to the language and script of the inscription, we know that the language of the inscription is generally considered as Prakrit, but it is distinct type of Prakrit or Magadhi Prakrit that was current in Magadha. It is also different from the language used in the rock edicts of Ashoka found in Odisha. You know that the rock edicts of Ashoka are found in Dhauli and Jaugarh, the two places in Odisha. So the language of Dhauli Jaugarh edicts are completely different from the language of Hathigumpha inscription. K. P. Jaiswal and R. D. Banerjee inclined to believe that the language of the inscription is not Magadhi and it has some resemblance with the canonical Pali. In fact, Prakrit had a number of variants in India such as Magadhi, Ardha Magadhi, Suraseni, Maharashtra, etc. And the language of the inscription may therefore be called as Odra Prakrit, which had some near approach to the canonical Prakrit. One of the finest compositions in the epigraphic literature of India This inscription is one of the finest compositions in the epigraphic literature of India, and most of the verbs are found in the present indicative and present causative forms, and the frequent occurrence of present tense indicates that Kharavela was ruling over Kalinga at the time of the composition and engraving of the inscription. It exhibits the excellence of poetic quality and retains the ornate and expressive prose style. The script is admittedly Brahmi and exhibits a stage of development after Asokan Brahmi. So it is different from Mauryan Brahmi. It is more advanced than the Mauryan Brahmi or Asokan Brahmi, and it can be called as the transitional Brahmi. Now coming to the date of Kharavela, this is the most controversial topic made by the scholars who have edited and re-edited the inscription. Now about the date of Kharavela, the inscription furnishes the names of 4 important rulers of ancient India in connection with the activities and achievements of Kharavela. First of all, we get an idea about or the reference about Satakarni, who was a Satavahana king. Then the inscription also tells us about one Nandaraja. He has been identified with Mahapadmananda, the king of Magadha. And the inscription also tells us about one Javanaraja. He was a foreigner, and it also refers to Vidya-mitra, the king of Magadha, a contemporary of Kharavela. Besides, the expression Tivaso Sata showing the time gap of 300 years between Nandaraja and Kharavela. Tivaso Sata has been variously interpreted by scholars. Some scholars point out it is 103 years, some other scholars believe that it is 300 years. Now we come to the conclusion that this is actually 300 years. Tivaso Sata may be interpreted as 300 years, that is that gap between Nandaraja and Kharavela. Mahapadmananda ruled in the 4th century BC and Kharavela ruled 300 years after him. So convincingly the inscription can be placed in the 1st century BC. Now regarding the ancestry and early career of the king, the inscription gives a fairly detailed account. Kharavela belonged to the 3rd generation of Chedi Mahameghabana dynasty of Kalinga. Mahameghabana was the progenitor of the family, and he was very likely the grandfather of Kharavela. Chetaraja was the immediate predecessor of Kharavela, and he was very likely his father. The inscription states that Kharavela was a young prince. As a young prince, was physically handsome and was brown complexioned. In his childhood, he received proper training in the field of writing, coinage, accountancy, legal and administrative procedures. The inscription states that he was competent in Lekha, Rupa, Ganana, Vyavahara, Vidhi. Lekha means writing, Rupa means coinage, Ganana means accountancy, Vyavahara means legal, and Vidhi means administrative rules and regulations or procedures. Now the king had also obtained proficiency in the art of dancing and music and also military techniques. While going through the slides of the caves and the sculptural embellishments in the caves, we shall get an idea about the dancing and music and also the military techniques. He assumed the responsibility of administration as a crown prince at the age of 15. For about 9 years he remained in that charge, and he was anointed as the king of Kalinga after the completion of 24th year. He had the title of Aira Maharaja, which denotes that he was an Aryan king, and he was also considered or called in the inscription as Kalingadipati, that is Lord of Kalinga. Now Kharavela was a benevolent king, and this is clear from his inscription. In the very first year of his reign, he repaired the gates, ramparts, structures of Kalinga Nagari. That was his capital. Kalinga Nagari was the capital of Kharavela, and it was severely damaged in the first regnal year or prior to the first regnal year of the king. That's why he repaired all the monuments that was located in Kalinga Nagari, the capital. And Kalinga Nagari has been identified by many scholars with modern Sisupalgarh, which is very close to Bhubaneswar, and it was excavated by ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, in 1948-49. Baby Lal was in charge of the excavation, and this site was also excavated later on by Monica Smith and Ravi Mahanti 10 years back. A fortified citadel with a huge mud rampart has been discovered from this site, and the site also yielded a number of antiquities like Panchmad coins, rollated wares, terracotta objects, iron implements, and many more. Kharavela had built flight of steps for the cool tank, Sitolo Tadago, that is the expression mentioned in the inscription, and he laid out all gardens at the cost of 3,500,000 coins, and thus pleased his subjects. So in the very first year of his reign, Kharavela proved himself to be a good and benevolent king. Now in the third regnal year, he made arrangements of festivals and gatherings and organized performances in acrobatics, dance and music. All these are all evident from the sculptural embellishments in the numerous caves in Khandagiri and Udayagiri hills. And Kharavela was accompanied by his queens and courtiers while watching or witnessing the performances. This indicates that king was a great patron of dance and music. These are the slides which show that the king was witnessing the dancing performances, the musical concerts, and also the military exhibitions made by the people of Kalinga in the capital city of Kalinga Nagari. In the fifth regnal year of the king, he had renovated the aqueduct, that is the canal that had been originally excavated some 300 years before by Nandaraja Mahapadmananda, and extended its flow up to Kalinga Nagari. From the excavation at Shishupalgarh, archaeologists could trace the evidence of a moat surrounding the fortified area. So there is a complete corroboration of the inscriptional matter and the archaeological findings, and this strengthens the identification of Kalinga Nagari with Shishupalgarh, modern Shishupalgarh. The benevolence of the king is further attested to by the act of remitting taxes and cesses for both the urban and rural population of each kingdom. There is an expression known as Paura Janapada. So Kharavela had remitted the taxes from both from the urban and rural people. Kharavela was also a great conqueror. He was a military genius, and the prevailing political situation demanded military preparedness on the part of the king, because during that time the Satavahanas were rising in the Deccan, and they were holding sway over the modern territories of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and Maharashtra states. And in Magadha, Vidya-mitra was also rising as a powerful ruler, and the Indo-Greeks were also threatening the integrity of India, and they were dominating the northern and northwestern part of India. And in the extreme south, there was a confederacy of the Tamil states, and the southern states like Cheras, Cholas, Pandyas, Satyaputras and Keraliputras, they were combined together to meet any challenges from the north. In these circumstances, the young and ambitious king Kharavela launched a career of conquests and reorganized the military strength of the kingdom. Now, Kharavela had organized and reorganized his army, and it was a vast army. Line 4 of the inscription points out that he had a vast army under his command, and it consisted of infantry, cavalry, elephantry and chariots. Infantry means Nara, cavalry means Haya, elephantry means Gaja, and chariot means Ratha. So all the fourfold division of army was under the command of the king. From line 17 it is known that he assumed the proud epithet of Apratihata Chakabahana Bala, or the position of a large or a huge and invincible army. Now, after reorganizing his army, Kharavela set out his conquests in different directions. First of all, in the second regnal year, Kharavela, disregarding Satakarni, mobilized his vast army to the west and marched up to the river Krishna and stormed the city of Asika. In the fourth regnal year, Kharavela again directed his army to march against the Satavahana territory. This time he took the assistance of the resources of Vidyadhara territory, which was then considered as invincible. The rulers of Rashtrikas and Bhojakas were crushed, their crowns were cast off, their umbrellas and other royal insignia were thrown aside, and their jewellery and wealth confiscated, and they were made to pay obeisance to the king of Kalinga. The discomfiture of the kings of Rashtrikas and Bhojakas made Kalinga a great power, and its sphere of influence extended from eastern sea to the western sea. Kharavela, in his first campaign against the Satavahanas and his second campaign against the Rashtrikas and Bhojakas, had almost made a complete control over the territories in the western part of Kalinga. Now, his next military expedition was directed against the kingdom of Magadha, because you know that Asoka, the king of Magadha, had invaded Kalinga in 261 BC, and Kharavela wanted to take revenge against him, and that's why he prepared his military ability or military forces, and in his 8th regnal year he marched to the north, demolished the fortress of Gorothagiri guarding Rajagriha. Gorothagiri has been identified with the Barabar hills, and Rajagriha is the same as Pataliputra. So Pataliputra was guarded by Gorothagiri, the hill fort of Barabar. Now at this critical juncture, the Indo-Greeks who had already taken possession of Mathura advanced towards Pataliputra. Kharavela diverted his plan of besieging Rajagriha, that is Pataliputra, and chastised the Javanas up to Mathura, drove them from there and saved the cities of Mathura, which was then a famous stronghold of Jainism. So Kharavela chastised the Javanas up to Mathura and saved the city of Mathura from the Javanas. In order to commemorate his victory against the Javanas, in the very next year, that is in the 9th regnal year, he constructed a huge victory palace, Mahavijaya Prasada, in Kalinga Nagari by spending 3,800,000 coins. In the 10th regnal year, Kharavela again marched towards Bharatabarsha for conquest. This is the first epigraphic reference to Bharatabarsha, which probably denoted North India in general. No details about the campaign have been mentioned in the record, except that the king secured jewels and precious stones from the retreating army. It seems that the retreating army referred to in the record could be the Indo-Greeks. So there is no detailed account of the fight in the 10th regnal year. In the 11th regnal year, Kharavela fought a war with the forces of confederated Tamil states, including the Cheras, Cholas, Pandyas, Satyaputras and Keraliputras. Possibly there was a confederacy of all these Tamil states, and Kharavela wanted to break the confederation in his 11th regnal year. And in the 13th regnal year, Kharavela lost his strange and wonderful elephants and sheep, but obtained horses and elephants and jewellery. The reference to loss of ships in the battle apparently point to a naval battle. Kharavela was evidently having a navy under his command. In the 12th regnal year, Kharavela proceeded with a vast army as far as Uttarapatha, that is the northwestern part of India, where he terrorized many kings to submission. Although inscription is silent on kings and kingdoms subdued by the king, yet it appears that the Indo-Greeks were compelled to submission. On his return to Uttarapatha, he planned to invade Magadha and encamped on the banks of the river Ganges. People of Magadha were struck terrified at the sight of the vast army of Kalinga. Vidya-mitra was then the ruler of Anga and Magadha, and he could not offer any resistance, and he was forced to surrender. After the defeat and surrender of the Magadhan ruler, Kharavela brought back to Kalinga the Kalinga Jina, that is the trophy of victory. Kharavela brought this Kalinga Jina, which was taken away by Nandaraja in 4th century BC. Thus, within a very brief span of 10 years, Kharavela could achieve a series of victories, extending his suzerainty from the northwestern part of India to South India. The army of Kalinga under his command marched through the territories of Satavahanas. They subdued the Rashtrikas and Bhojakas, they chastised the Javanas, they terrorized the people of Magadha and destroyed the confederacy of the Tamil states. These military exploits did not aim at establishing a political empire. This is most important, that Kharavela didn't mean to establish a political empire of Kalinga engulfing all the conquered territories, but to exhibit the power and prestige of Kalinga by humbling the rising powers of his time. In this respect, he fully justified the claim of the title Chakrabartin given to him in the inscription of his chief queen. Kharavela was a great patron of Jainism. Unlike Ashoka, who was a convert to Buddhism, Kharavela was a Jaina by faith. The opening lines of Hathigumpha Inscription clearly reads, Namo Arhatanam, Namo Sabba Siddhanam, saluting the Arhats and all the Siddhas. His military campaigns were often linked with his religious zeal for heightening the prestige of the Jaina faith. In his 8th regnal year, he rescued Mathura, the famous pilgrim center of Jainism, from the Javanas, and brought from there a sapling of the Kalpa tree with a ceremonious military procession to Kalinga. In the 11th regnal year, Kharavela is said to have reclaimed the ancient city of Pithunda by plows drawn by asses. The reclamation of the city by the use of asses in place of bulls indicates that the king was a devotee of first Tirthankara Adijino Rishabhanath. After defeating the king of Magadha, Kharavela brought back the Kalinga Jina to Kalinga. It was taken away by Mahapadmananda some 300 years back, as we have already pointed out. The king is also called as an Upasaka or a devotee of Svetambara system, and bestowed royal endowments to the monks of that sect. For the rainy season retreats of the Jaina monks, the king had excavated a number of cells or caves for resting of their bodies in the Udaigiri hills. Officers and noblemen of the time of Kharavela, as well as his chief queen and son, emulated the example set by him and extended patronage to Jainism by excavating caves and making endowments to the monks and Sramanas. He had equal respect and honor for all the religious sects. Now we shall come to the ideals of kingship. The inscription of Kharavela does not explicitly refer to the pattern of administration, but he seems to have emulated the ideals of kingship as envisaged by Kautilya in his Arthashastra. He had studied all branches of knowledge required for a king. In line 10 of the inscription, he is represented as an embodiment of the principles of politics, diplomacy, peace and equity, and the expression in the inscription is Danda Sandhi Samaya. He assumed the title of Vaira Maharaja, that can be translated as the king of the Aryan race. The coronation of the king is compared with that of Prithu, the son of Bainya, and he was also a benevolent king who pleased his subjects by remitting taxes, by organizing festivities, by erecting monuments, and also by repairing the monuments. He turned the life of a Rajasri and declared himself the worshipper of Rajasri Basu. In the last line of the inscription, he is described as an upholder of law, protector of law, and executor of law. The Manchapuri cave inscription of Kharavela is called as Chakravartin, or an all-powerful king. The inscription further reveals at many places that he had under his command an invincible army consisting of infantry, cavalry, elephantry, chariots and navy. The king possessed an invincible army, and this is known from the expressions like Mahati Sena, Sena Bahini and Apradhyata Chakravahini Vala. The offensive strategy of the king to exhibit the military might of the Kalinga is manifest in the number of campaigns which he had successfully undertaken in different directions. From the building activities initiated by the ruler, either in the renovation of canals, repairs of devastated township of Kalinga Nagari, excavation of caves and erection of dwelling houses in twin hills, maintenance of a huge armed force, or the construction of a beautiful victory palace in his capital city, it is apparent that he had used the state resources for all these accomplishments. The state treasury was replenished by revenues collected from different sources, the war booty and gifts in the form of coins, pearls, jewels and precious stones from the subdued rulers and subordinates also added to the treasury. The financial stability of the kingdom is further attested to by the remittance of taxes from the general public living in both rural and urban areas. In short, the Kalinga was a prosperous kingdom under Kharavela. Although nothing is known about the administrative system of Kalinga under Kharavela, yet the short commemorative inscriptions in the numerous caves of Udaigiri bear ample testimony to the well-organized administrative system under Kharavela. Now we shall come to the summary of the inscription. The inscription offers a fairly good idea about the career and achievements of the king. It reflects the political religious climate of Kalinga and the whole of India. In the post-Maurya period, the kingdom of Kalinga reasserted its independence under the Mahamegha Vahanas and attempted to avenge the defeat and discomfiture against Magadha. The text of the inscription further supplements the process of state formation in Kalinga in the post-Maurya phase. The primary state of Magadha had cast its impact on Kalinga. Its subsequent interaction with the pristine state supplied necessary ideas and idioms for the development of a state apparatus with all its essential elements. Thank you.